And Arizona's 2020 race for the U.S. Senate is poised to become one of the most expensive in history. With no current opponent, Mark Kelly is the presumed Democratic nominee. The same was true for Senator McSally until my next guest jumped into the race, Valley businessman Daniel McCarthy. He joins me now in studio for his first appearance on Politics Unplugged. Thank you very much for joining us. And I want to give you an opportunity to kind of open the show with who you are, sure, why you ran.
I'm a local entrepreneur. We've had a lot of success in business. My business partner is my wife, and her and I have developed a great couple of businesses. We have 4 kids that we care for, obviously, with our entire heart. And I'm just a God-fearing man running for office.
And so what prompted you to kind of jump into this race and take on an incumbent senator right now? As you saw in the package before, President Trump has already thrown his endorsement his way, and you very much are a big supporter of the president.
Yeah, well, let me stop that. President Trump endorsed McSally before I got into the race. Let's start there. Mm-hmm. Second to that is that I have had to consider this based on the fact that we as a party, and frankly as a independent voice in the community, we have lost 1 Senate seat. And we are possibly going to lose another one, quite frankly, more than likely with our current candidate in the Republican side. So I had to make a decision based on the fact that we are going to lose another seat, in my opinion, so I decided to get in.
And how serious are you about this? A lot of talk has been about your wealth and about your ability to self-fund and scratch out a check for your campaign. How much are you willing to spend?
I would be a hypocrite if I said that I'm a fiscal conservative if I have to spend a tremendous amount of money to get this done. My job and my goal with this race is to demonstrate to young entrepreneurs out there and to everyone that's out there, money should not be controlling our politics. It's getting to the point now where it's so corrupt and it's so nasty that if I can't demonstrate that we can do this far better than most candidates ever have, then I would be a hypocrite. So I plan on obviously putting some money into the campaign to get it started. But of course, we're looking for donations and help and everything else.
How much? What's the limit for you? And then how much do you think you're going to be able to have to raise to compete with Senator McSally, who's going to be able to raise an unlimited amount of money?
Well, I believe it's competing with Mark Kelly, and I think personally that the amount of money that I need to spend, whatever that is, we will have.
Okay, let's talk about one issue I think you've taken with Senator McSally. And that is on the issue of guns. Now, Martha McSally, her stance on gun control, as a congressional candidate back in 2012, McSally was very clear that she strongly opposed closing the gun show loophole that allows buyers to evade background checks when conducting private sales. In light of the recent mass shootings, her stance seems to have softened a little bit. Check this out.
Just like I can sell my car, I can sell my gun. And so that's the law, and it's not a loophole, it's freedom, and absolutely it needs to stay that way, because any restrictions on that at gun shows or other places is just absolutely unconstitutional.
If we're looking to address the issue of private sales or family transfers, I want to look at what those initiatives are, I want to study them, and I want to make sure it's going to make a difference while it's also protecting the rights of law-abiding citizens.
The president has talked about the potential of expanding background checks. Yes or no on that? Would you support him on that?
So Dennis, I'm not trying to avoid you. I'm just trying to tell you what my guiding principles are as I'm looking at legislation, as I'm having conversations with people.
Would you support the president if he went for and wanted universal background checks? We have a history of voting against it.
Yeah, so look, I'm for strengthening the system that we have. I'm open to having conversations about anything that is actually going to fix this problem while also protecting people's constitutional rights.
Where are you on the background check?
It's political double talk. That's what you're hearing. We're sick of it. We're sick of politicians running our country, frankly, unconstitutionally. When it comes to the firearm debate, let's talk about the fact that 2.2 million people a year 2.2 million people a year defend themselves with a firearm. Did you know that?
I did not know that,
okay,
and
so
I don't know that to be accurate.
Well, okay, left-leaning statistics say 180,000 people a year defend themselves with a firearm. So where am I on background checks? It's a part of our culture in America that people have the right to protect themselves with firearms. So I'm an unequivocal no. We have too many laws on the books as it sits.
But don't you want to keep guns out of the hands of people like convicted violent felons and people like that?
You're never going to keep guns out of the hands of criminals. It's not going to work. That argument it doesn't make any sense. And again, it's a political jargon argument. This is why I'm so concerned about the politics in our country. We have a constitution. That constitution is supposed to be respected. We have a rule of law that's not being respected. So my argument with not just the left or the right, everybody, they go wherever the political winds blow. And frankly, everybody's getting tired of it. When I talk to independents, when I talk to Democrats, they're sick and tired of our states not having the rights that they're supposed to be having.
Do you see any limitations on the Second Amendment?
I think the Second Amendment is clear. I mean, it's not to be infringed. So you interpret that. I think it's already been interpreted many times by the federal government.
All right. Now, I also want to show you this. Earlier this week, I had asked your potential general election opponent, Mark Kelly, about former Congressman Beto O'Rourke's hardline stance on guns and how he felt about that and his broader stance on gun control. Check this out.
I'm not in support of what Congressman O'Rourke, said on the stage. Specifically going and confiscating people's firearms. I do not support that. I think we need to approach this on what do most of us agree with? Background checks for all gun sales, red flag laws, restrictions on size of magazines, mental health care, right? I mean, you often hear this from folks on the other side of the aisle that this is a mental health issue. Well, it's a complicated issue. Part of this is, we need better mental health care in our country. We also need to make it really hard for people who are felons, domestic abusers, suspected terrorists, people who are dangerously mentally ill from getting easy access to guns. That's where our focus should be.
So I'll ask you heard Mr. Kelly there talking about that. Is there any plan that you have that would make it harder for people, convicted felons, for domestic abusers to get a weapon?
No, it's not the federal government's job. The federal government is already doing too much in every department of our lives. How long are we going to sit here and allow the federal government to continue to take over every segment of our life? We're creating a nanny state like I've never seen before. Now listen, the next step in this process is this. That what you just heard from both candidates is bureaucratic political talk. Everybody's fed up with it. They want common sense. They need someone with a steady hand. Tragedies do happen. But by the way, none of the tragedies are being reported in Chicago. None of the tragedies are being reported everywhere else. So how about the suicide rate? How about the fact that 60,000 people a year are dying from drugs pouring across our border and overdosing? We have serious issues going on right now, and every time a headline comes on for, let's just say a mass tragedy, it diverts the conversation to these laws. I don't understand it. It's weird.
So it's weird. Opposed to the red flag laws. The Governor Ducey has come out. He has said he is supportive of red flag laws. Tried to get them passed at the legislature. McSally has said that she's supportive of red flag laws.
Sure.
You are opposed to this, correct?
Correct. Yeah, they're gun confiscation laws. Do you know how dangerous these are? You're telling our law enforcement officials that they are going to go out there into people's homes. Do you realize how dangerous this is for our law enforcement community? Our poor police officers. I've been talking to police officers. I'm telling you, there's a lot of people standing up against this, and this is what my candidacy represents. We need common sense. We need authenticity. We need respect for our actual rule of law. So again, this is why I'm resonating with most people that I'm talking to.
All right,
I think you too.
Let's move on now. Let's talk a little bit about health care. Senator McSally is already getting hit with attack ads on her health care stance. She voted for a Republican-backed measure to repeal the Affordable Care Act, which was ultimately killed by Senator John McCain's late-night thumbs down. What's your take on health care? Are you for repealing of the ACA, and do you see any difference between you and your primary opponent?
Yeah, there's a tremendous amount of difference. We need to create innovation in our healthcare system. Right now, bureaucrats are owned. They're owned by big pharma, corporate lobbyists for insurance companies. If we were to set up we could design the best health insurance system in the world, and we should be the envy of the world. We deserve it. I don't like what's happening in this specifically. It's dangerous what's going on.
Do you support Attorney General Brnovich's lawsuit to repeal the ACA?
I think that, yeah, I mean, it's unconstitutional. You have to think about this. Why is it that the left wants government-controlled healthcare? What is the rationale behind that?
Okay. So I guess like with the
Obama is on the record of saying that this is a step to go towards government-controlled healthcare.
Yeah.
I mean, this is in the press. You can research this stuff. Why do you think, so yes, I'm going to be labeled as right or this or that. It's just common sense. We do not want government-controlled healthcare.
How do you repeal the ACA and then still keep pre-existing conditions? Are you okay with doing away with pre-existing conditions?
I think pre-existing conditions is something that everyone agrees upon. I really do. I think that you can't have, again, that's an example of a good policy that needs to stay. Everybody wants, you shouldn't be able to deny someone coverage for pre-existing conditions.
But again, with your repealing the ACA, how do you keep
Well, that's simple. I mean, you just exchange one that's a simple one law passes one, it's. This isn't complicated.
All right, now let's move on to another big issue here. Let's talk a little bit about climate change. Recent CBS poll finds that nearly 2/3 of Americans say climate change is a crisis or a serious problem. Where are you on this issue? Do you believe that climate change is really happening? And more importantly, do you believe that human activity is causing this to happen?
I grew up in New York public education, and we were indoctrinated to believe that global warming was a fact, and then all of a sudden it turned into climate change, and I'm standing there as a young man thinking to myself, what happened to this argument? How did they pull this over? How did it go from global warming to climate change? So I think there's a lot of pseudoscience. I think there's a lot of people that have bad intentions, frankly, that are pushing this. I don't know what the agenda is. I don't know why it's so corrupt. I don't care. My opinion on it is this. Is there human elements to changing our weather? Really? I mean, we're not gods. The fact is that every time you hear of this argument, it seems like there's a big bureaucratic push to make huge government control and huge government changes. It makes no sense to me. I just don't get it.
So you think there's pseudoscience behind the claims that climate change is real and poses an existential threat?
I think there's very debatable science behind it. I think it's if we want to have that debate, I think the debate needs to be had in a way that is not so biased towards one way or the other. I mean, as Americans, it's getting to the point where we can't have a civil conversation about something because people are so convinced that the world is going to be ending in 10 years. Do you know how many times we've been told that? Mm-hmm. I mean, it's...
Okay. And a couple other things I do want to hit up here with you before we end this interview here. I want to talk about immigration. Specifically, I want to talk about some comments you made about annexing Mexico. It seems to be getting a lot of attention, on social media and whatnot. Explain this now, because you were on a radio show. You were talking to Real Clear Politics, and you were saying, look, why don't we just annex Mexico?
Well, no, it was supposed to be a 20-minute radio interview. It turned into a 2-hour radio interview, and everybody loves to hear what I'm saying because it's something that I think needs to be talked about on the fact that we have a constitutional way for countries to become states in this country. Arizona's only 100 years old. It was kind of a joke. It's a joke, but I mean, with that being said, again, what's happening isn't right. We have people it's inhumane what's going on in our border. I've been there. I don't know if you've been there. I'm sure you have. You see what's going on down there. You have people dying on our border. You have environmental issues all across our border. It has to be solved. So what I was just saying is that there are ways for countries to become states. Maybe, by the way, that's in our Constitution. You understand that, right? Mm-hmm. I didn't make this up. There's a way for people to petition and become states.
Yeah, we've expanded from 13.
There you go.
Yeah. So there you go. So also too, I did want to talk to you a little bit too about a key issue in the Republican Party: abortion. Do you support bans on abortion, limiting abortions, anything similar to like the one in Alabama, which included no exemptions except for when the life of the mother was put at risk?
My question to the American public and to Arizona citizens is this: when does life begin?
When do you believe life?
When does life begin? I believe life begins at conception. Okay. So if life begins at conception, then we need to have the argument and the discussion from there. Okay? Because at some point in time, 60 million abortions have been conducted in this country. 60 million. So at some point, and this is going, by the way, I'm speaking to women out there who understand this issue very, very personally. This affects people the suicide rate and depression rate with young women that go through this? We're putting young women at 15 years old, 14 years old, out to the doctors where they're making decisions that are critical for the rest of their life. Yes, I think that we need to have this discussion, but we need to have the discussion in the proper way.
Exemptions for rape and incest.
When does life begin? That's the discussion we need to have.
So no exemptions.
We need to have the discussion of when life begins. If life begins at conception, right? Mm-hmm. That is a life.
Okay. All right, we'll end it there. Thank you very much.